Hello, everybody, and welcome to Turnstile Talk. Today, we are unraveling the spectacular failure of Disney's most ambitious and short-lived hospitality experiment, Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser. Now, this was supposed to be the future of immersive entertainment, a game changer for theme parks, resorts, and live-action roleplay. Instead, it became one of the most expensive misfires in Disney history, shutting down after just only 18 months. So what went wrong? Was it the concept, the execution, the price tag? Well, buckle up as we travel to a galaxy far, far away. Let's start with what Disney was actually trying to do here. The Galactic Starcruiser wasn't just a hotel. It wasn't just a themed experience. It was designed to be a fully immersive, live-action Star Wars story, where guests weren't just passive observers, but active participants. This was a two-night adventure aboard the Halcyon, a star cruiser where guests would interact with an original cast of characters, embark on secret missions, and, depending on their choices, influence the outcome of the story. Now imagine stepping into a Star Wars movie where everything you do matters. Guests weren't just booking a room, they were boarding a starship and becoming part of a narrative that unfolded in real time. Every conversation with a character could open up new missions, every choice could shift the way the story played out. Some guests might align with the Resistance, working covertly to undermine the First Order, while others could embrace a more scoundrel-like existence, making deals and running smuggling operations. There were also passengers who might just enjoy playing along without picking a side, mingling in the ship's lavish dining hall, watching intergalactic performances, or exploring the high-tech bridge. Now, on paper, this was a pretty revolutionary idea, one that blended the best aspects of live theater, video game mechanics, escape rooms, and Disney's signature hospitality into one high-end experience. It really did have the potential to redefine what a theme park resort could be. But while it was ambitious, it also had a fundamental problem. Who was it actually designed for? To fully engage with the Galactic Starcruiser, guests needed to be comfortable with role-playing, something that many casual theme park visitors aren't particularly interested in. It wasn't just about wearing a Jedi robe and carrying a lightsaber. This was a full-time in-character experience where guests were expected to engage with actors, follow detailed storylines, and really make choices that shaped their journey. If you weren't willing to commit to the immersion, the experience quickly became awkward. And that's where the cracks started to form. Because when you really start to think about the type of person who would fully commit to this experience, the Venn diagram of ideal guests really gets small. The hardcore Star Wars fans, the ones who would shell out thousands for a chance to step inside the universe, were not necessarily the same people who enjoy live-action role-playing. And the people who do love interactive storytelling and improv-style roleplay, many of them simply couldn't afford the price tag. More on that later. That left Disney trying to appeal to an audience that, for the most part, didn't exist at the scale they needed for long-term success. To enjoy the Galactic Starcruiser the way Disney intended, you needed to love Star Wars, but not just casually love it. You had to be the kind of fan who was willing to engage in full-on roleplay, staying in character, following complex storylines, and interacting with actors for 2 days straight. This wasn't an experience where you could just show up, sit back, and casually enjoy a themed environment. Every moment required participation, and that's a big ask for even the most die-hard fans. Now, some people love Star Wars but aren't into role-playing. Some people love role-playing but aren't into Star Wars. And then there's the biggest group of all. People who love both but aren't comfortable engaging in improv-style interactions with actors. Not everyone wants to act like they're a rebel spy sneaking around a spaceship. Some people just want to admire the theming, enjoy good food, and maybe meet a character or two. But that wasn't the kind of experience Disney was offering here. And then there's another major issue. The version of Star Wars that Disney chose to build this around. Most hardcore Star Wars fans are nostalgic for the original trilogy. They want to see Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Darth Vader. They want the Millennium Falcon and the Death Star, the Mos Eisley Cantina, Cloud City. Instead, the Galactic Starcruiser was set in the sequel trilogy era, featuring characters like Rey, Kylo Ren, and a bunch of brand new faces that don't really have the same cultural pull. Right away, this cut out a huge portion of the Star Wars fan base, those who didn't connect with the newer films or didn't care about this specific slice of the universe. Now, not to underplay, but this was a massive mistake. The sequel trilogy as a whole has a far more divided fan base than the original or even the prequel trilogy. A lot of longtime Star Wars fans either dislike or outright reject Disney's version of the franchise. By placing the Galactic Starcruiser in the sequel trilogy era, Disney immediately alienated the very audience that would be most willing to invest in an experience. It also meant that younger fans who did grow up with Rey and Kylo were priced out of the experience entirely. I don't know about you guys, but I don't know many teenagers who can afford an experience like this. Now let's talk about characters. One of the biggest selling points of something like Star Wars Galaxy's Edge is seeing familiar faces. But this Galactic Starcruiser didn't even lean into the star power of its own era. Rey and Kylo Ren made brief appearances, but for the most part, the entire experience centered on original characters, people you had never heard of before with no emotional attachment to the largest Star Wars universe. That's a tough sell when you're trying to justify a price tag of several $1,000s. Now, I love the idea of original characters, but again, for the price that you're paying, you're expecting to see these characters that are infamous in a much more significant portion of the experience. Now, let's say you do love Star Wars. Let's say you do love role-playing. Now you've got another issue, and it's one that we've mentioned throughout this entire video essay: the price tag. This is where things go from questionable to flat out insane, in my opinion. A 2-night stay in the Galactic Starcruiser cost $4,800 for 2 people and $6,000 for a family of 4. Now, that's not an exaggeration. This was more expensive than some actual real-life luxury cruises. And let's be clear, those cruises typically last a full week, provide expansive ocean views, high-end dining, spa treatments, endless amenities. By comparison, the Galactic Starcruiser gave you 2 days in a themed box with no real sense of space and grandeur. For that price, you got a small windowless room designed to look like a spaceship cabin, 3 meals a day, entertainment, and a side trip to Galaxy's Edge and Hollywood Studios. But here's the thing. Most of those meals weren't particularly extravagant. The food was designed to look otherworldly, but at the end of the day, it was still just theme park food with colorful dyes and odd plating. The entertainment was more interactive theater than blockbuster spectacular, relying on guests to suspend disbelief rather than providing truly awe-inspiring moments. And the trip to Galaxy's Edge, well, it was basically the same as what a standard park guest could experience, with no major exclusive perks, like front-of-the-line access to attractions. Believe they did change this towards the end, but still, for that amount of money, you're not getting the expected value. Now, speaking of value, the biggest issue was value perception. When you hear $6,000 Star Wars vacation, you imagine an experience that feels grand, luxurious, and high-tech, something that truly justifies the price tag. Instead, guests found themselves in compact, minimally decorated rooms with screens acting as fake windows and bunk beds that felt more like a dorm than a high-end resort. Even worse, the fact that this was a 2-day all-consuming experience meant that guests couldn't even leave to explore other parts of Disney World without essentially abandoning the storyline they paid for. Even more frustrating, there was no flexibility in how you spent your time. Unlike a traditional hotel where you can decide your own schedule, the Starcruiser operated like a cruise ship with a rigid itinerary. Every guest was expected to follow a structured storyline, and if you wanted to just relax, skip missions, take a break, you risked missing out on content you had paid a pretty extreme premium for. So let's put ourselves in the shoes of a family planning a Disney vacation. With that same budget, you could book a week-long stay at a deluxe Disney resort, visit every park, enjoy fine dining experiences, and still have extra spending money for lightsabers, souvenirs, and VIP experiences. Or you could lock yourself inside a 2-day experience that, while impressive in concept, didn't provide much breathing room or flexibility. And that's the fundamental problem. Most families took one look at the cost and said, no way. Even if they were huge Star Wars fans, even if they loved immersive experiences, the sheer sticker shock was just too much to justify. And here's another critical flaw. Who actually had the money for this experience? And I want you to think about that. Because when you break it down, the people who could afford it, basically the wealthy Disney elite, as they're called, they're used to luxury experiences. If you're spending $6,000, you probably expect luxury. You want big spacious rooms, high-end dining, downtime to relax. But the Galactic Starcruiser wasn't built for relaxing. It was a full-time commitment. You were constantly being given missions, asked to participate in unfolding storylines, and interacting with characters. There was no pool, no spa, no real way to step outside the experience and just chill. The people who love role-playing and immersive experiences, they're typically not the ones dropping thousands on luxury vacations, as mentioned before. So the price alone alienated both of the audiences this experience should have been targeting. Now let's talk about the marketing. The marketing. The first look at the Galactic Starcruiser came in a now infamous promo video that featured an influencer awkwardly interacting with a lounge singer. Instead of showcasing the excitement of an intergalactic adventure, it looked cheap. The set design seemed more like a low-budget sci-fi TV show than a premium Disney experience. The promotional materials focused on corny character interactions instead of action-packed, high-stakes storytelling. And the worst part, they pulled the video almost immediately after the backlash started. Disney never fully recovered from that fumbled first impression. When people saw what they were actually getting for their money, the skepticism turned into outright ridicule. And when your audience starts mocking the product before it even opens, you know you're in trouble. Marketing is about setting expectations, and Disney completely miscalculated what Star Wars fans wanted to see. Instead of showing a thrilling cinematic adventure with high-tech environments, alien worlds, and pulse-pounding action, they highlighted an awkward influencer experience with what felt like a cheap dinner show. The visuals didn't help either. The lighting was bright and flat, making everything look like a soundstage rather than a real Star Wars location. The costumes, instead of looking high-end and film accurate, seemed more like something from a community theater production. The Halcyon itself looked sterile and underwhelming. For a $6,000 experience, fans expected something spectacular. But what they got looked more like a Star Wars-themed escape room, frankly at a shopping mall. And then there was the complete failure to sell the story. What exactly was the Galactic Starcruiser supposed to be? A Star Wars vacation, a role-playing game, an interactive dinner theater, 2-day LARP? The marketing never clearly explained what guests were actually paying for. The confusion led to an immediate backlash, with many assuming that this was just an overpriced hotel with minimal real Star Wars content. Social media only made things worse. The YouTube and Twitter reactions were brutal. Fans compared the promotional footage to a bad sci-fi sitcom, wondering how Disney could charge luxury cruise prices for something that looked so underwhelming. The fact that Disney took down the promo video almost immediately confirmed what everyone already suspected. They knew it was a bad first impression. And then there was the absence of Star Wars' most iconic characters in the marketing. There were no appearances from Luke, Han, Leia, Vader, or even prequel-era favorites like Obi-Wan or Anakin. The whole thing revolved around original characters that nobody had any attachment to. Instead of leaning into nostalgia, something that would have helped sell the idea, they doubled down on the sequel trilogy aesthetic, which already had a fractured fan base. Instead of selling it to all Star Wars fans, they were targeting a very specific and limited audience. By the time more polished promotional material came out, the damage had already been done. First impressions are everything, and the Galactic Starcruiser had already become a meme before a single guest had even stepped aboard. The perception was set. This was an overpriced, uninspired, and unnecessary addition to Disney's lineup. The marketing had not only failed to excite fans, it had actively driven them away. And when you fail to convince your audience that something is worth the price, there's no real coming back from that. But even beyond all this, there was one last nail in the coffin. The experience just wasn't repeatable. When you book a Disney cruise, there's variety. Different ships, different destinations, excursions. You can sail to the Caribbean, you can sail to Alaska, Europe, Bahamas. Even if you take the same ship twice, which I've done before, you can choose different activities, dine in different restaurants, you can experience different entertainment. Likewise, when you stay at a Disney resort, which I also have, you can visit the parks in any order, dine at different restaurants. There's an infinite amount of experiences to be had. There's an incentive to return. The Galactic Starcruiser, it was the same every single time. Once you played through the missions, saw the story unfold, experienced the set pieces, there wasn't much reason to come back. It was designed to be a one-and-done experience, which is really a terrible business model for something that requires incredibly high operational costs. There were no alternative storylines, no major branching narratives, and no seasonal updates. The characters and overarching plot remained static, meaning that if you had already saved the day on one trip, you'd just be repeating the same beats if you returned. Guests who had experienced it once had no compelling reason to do it ever again, and without repeat visitors, Disney was left constantly searching for new guests willing to pay the high price tag. Now that's a huge problem for something this expensive to operate. Attractions and resorts rely on repeat visitors to stay profitable. Even expensive high-end offerings like VIP tours or Club 33 memberships work because they offer status, exclusivity, and variety. The Galactic Starcruiser offered none of those things. Once you had done it, you had done it, and there was no reason to justify another $6,000 visit. Disney could have tried to introduce different mission paths or seasonal overlays to add variety, but they didn't. Instead, they expected a steady stream of first-time guests willing to spend a fortune for a single visit. That kind of model simply just isn't sustainable in a theme park environment. And without repeatability, there was no long-term growth potential. And without long-term growth potential, the Galactic Starcruiser was doomed to fail. So when Disney shut it down, it really wasn't a surprise. By the time they announced the closure, they had already started discounting rooms, offering cast member deals, and trying to fill the ship with influencers and media guests. They were bleeding money to keep it open. And in an era where Disney was already struggling financially post-pandemic, it was an obvious cost-cutting move. As bookings slowed and the initial wave of high-spending guests dried up, Disney attempted various ways to entice new visitors. Discounts started appearing, and they even tried exclusive offerings for Disney Vacation Club members and affluent fans, but it wasn't enough. The model was fundamentally flawed. The cost of operation, actors, special effects, food service, and maintenance were too high. And with each passing month, it became clearer and clearer that this experiment simply couldn't be sustained. The Galactic Starcruiser was a bold experiment. It was innovative, ambitious, and unlike anything Disney had ever attempted before. But at the end of the day, it was just too expensive, too restrictive, too niche, and too poorly marketed to ever be sustainable. The combination of a high-cost, non-repeatable experience, a fractured Star Wars fan base, and a marketing misfire all converged to make this one of Disney's most infamous flops. The question now is, will we ever see something like this again? It's possible, but it'll have to be done differently. If Disney ever attempts another immersive hotel, they'll need to lower the costs, broaden the appeal, and make it something guests actually want to come back to. They'll need to create a model that allows for repeatability, variety, and a stronger connection to the Star Wars brand that all fans can appreciate. And more importantly, Disney needs to understand that successful immersive experiences require balance. A mix of player agency, flexibility, and accessibility. If they want guests to embrace a new kind of vacation, they need to provide a reason to return, an experience that can be tailored to different budgets, and an approach that doesn't alienate core fans by doubling down on divisive creative decisions. Until then, the Halcyon remains a cautionary tale of what happens when great ideas crash into harsh realities. It's a lesson in ambition, meeting economic reality, and a warning that even the biggest entertainment company in the world isn't immune to misreading the audience. Now, I want to hear your thoughts. Why did the Galactic Starcruiser fail? Was there anything I missed? Is there another intellectual property where you think an immersive hotel experience would work well? Personally, I've always said a Hogwarts castle experience would be great, but that's the problem with these type of experiences. From a design standpoint and an operational standpoint, they're just really hard to get right. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Turnstile Talk.